Wednesday evening. Good evening to you, Grenada, Carriacou, Petite Martinique, the rest of the Eastern Caribbean. To you, wherever you are, this is GBN. Welcome to GBN Television Election Watch. This is a platform where we, through your eyes, my eyes, your eyes, we dissect the issues as we see them. Issues as it relates to the economy, our standard of living, our way of life as a people. As you can well appreciate, as we get into another election cycle, there's many conversations that comes up, but very often the question is, how does these issues, they affect us? And on this evening, as all other every Wednesday, we invite different stakeholders that would dissect the issues as to how they affect you and I. This evening, joining me in studio is youth leader Joel Greenidge. Joel, good evening to you. Thanks for being part of the program.
Pleasant good evening to you, Mr. Joseph. It's indeed a pleasure to be here, and I just want to say a special good evening to the viewing public, those who are viewing via social media and those who are viewing via GBN television.
Indeed, we say thank you for being part of this conversation. Joining us remotely from the luxury of home, the General Secretary of the new National Party, Mr. Roland Bhola. Mr. Bhola, good evening and welcome to the platform.
Good evening to you, Joseph. Good evening to the other panelists there, Mr. Greenidge, and of course, to the members and staff of GBN, your listening audience, those who are viewing, those who might just be listening. A pleasant good evening to everyone.
Gentlemen, we're going to jump into this head first, no holds barred. I'm going to start with you, Joel. If I were to ask you as a young, because you've youth leader, I mean, you've been involved in youth involvement, and you pride yourself in being a voice for the voiceless, agitating issues and bringing issues to the fore. I hope I got that right. If I were to ask you on any given day, what in your estimations are some of the indicators that would suggest to you that an individual, a person, a family, is living a relatively comfortable life economically?
Well,
what would you point to?
One of the main indicators will be their ability to afford quality and affordable healthcare indeed, the ability to afford basic food supplies, the ability to provide their children with a good education, the ability to actually just meet their basic commitments. You know, I will consider that person to be living a very comfortable life in the context of Grenada.
Are you living a comfortable life, Joel? In the context of what you've highlighted to me?
I would say that, yes.
You're living a comfortable life?
Yeah.
Okay. Mr. Bhola, I'm going to toss it over to you. I think you are no rookie to this field. What in your estimations, I mean, as you said, you haven't been around the block, will be some of the indicators to you that an individual is living a comfortable life as you look at the economics of who we are and the issues that affects us?
Thank you, Mr. Cadore, and listen to what Joel said, and he's not wrong in any way. However, I would say a response to that question is very relative, depending on who the individuals are that you're looking at. Because relative comfort from an economic standpoint varies depending on the family that you're looking at. In the minds of some people, absolute economic comfort is just, for them, the ability to get by daily. You know, they would consider that as being comforting and relatively easy economically. Others, they may have higher dreams or higher aspirations. So for another family, they may believe that earning a vehicle is what makes them feel economically comfortable. And there was a period and a year when owning a vehicle was a luxury. By today's standard, it has almost become a necessity. So I'll say that there are a number of variables that one can look at. It all depends on what standards the people want to survive at. It depends on the area of the country that you are at, because I would like to throw out a challenge to say that for someone, for example, living a lifestyle in a Chublo or a Lansapine or a place like that, I would want to suggest that what is economically comfortable for them would differ and probably would be at a different level from someone living, for example, in a La Poterie or Rivasali or maybe Mount Rich or Mount Rural.
Okay.
So there are variables, yes. I don't think any answer is really a wrong answer. I believe it's just how comfortable someone feels about the ability to provide the basic needs that they have at any given time.
Well, fair enough. No, if we were, and I'm asking this on the contract, if we look at, let's say, Maslow's hierarchies of needs, all human beings, we need food, shelter, clothing. And whether you're living in Tivoli, the furthest point inside of Lansapine, there's some basic necessities, Joel, that we all need in Mr. Bhola. And notwithstanding where you are, each and every one of us wants to get to a point in our lives where we're relatively comfortable that we can say, I have food, shelter, clothing, but even though I'm eating, I'm able to provide those needs with a measure of ease. With that being said, you get the sense that what's the conversation you hear? Because very often there is the sense that the average Grenadian, live from paycheck to paycheck. And if that is that a true reflection of what's happening in Grenada? And if in fact it is, can we say that we're living that comfortable life?
I will look at it from the standpoint from a youth perspective. I mean, at least 60% of our population are youth. And if you look at most of the developmental issues in our country, young people are the ones mostly affected, whether it's by unemployment, poverty, social and economic injustice, inequity in terms of the access to, resources and stuff. So the fact is, many young people in Grenada today find it very difficult to actually meet their basic needs, because a young person may have to choose from paying his student loan and having to determine for this month whether he can afford healthcare if he wants to go to the doctor, maybe to do, even to the dentist to do, check his teeth or to do a general checkup. But looking at his the disposable income is not really there. Even in terms of eating properly, where a person who might be in a very stable financial position and have that sort of broad space in terms of disposable income may be able to afford nutritious food. Most young people with the income level in the country being so low, they are forced to eat foods that are not really healthy and nutritious, and consequently you're seeing the rise in hypertension and diabetes and kidney failure among our young people, which is having a serious impact on our healthcare system and causing government to have to subsidize that healthcare cost. So, and also putting a lot of family into deeper hole in poverty when family having to, take loans, to get medical access to medical help for that person, and eventually, if that person dies, they're left with a huge loan, and further, pushing that family deeper into poverty. So, the challenges in terms of from that standpoint, young people are finding it extremely difficult to really even able to access loans, for example, to build, because of they don't have that actually space in terms of disposable income to service that loan. So it's a major challenge, and what I would basically say in terms of moving forward into the future is something that must be addressed, especially the income level in the country. Because if that is able to be addressed, therefore young people would be in a better position. Even though they are qualified currently, the income level is low. So once they're able to get the sort of income that is able to give them that sort of disposable income, they would be able to improve their quality of life and standard of living, and the society on a whole would actually be better.
Mr. Bhola, do you agree with the assessment? Would you agree with the assessment that Joel made as it relates to the current standard status of young people and their seeming inability to meet their basic day-to-day needs financially?
I think Joel made some points that are very relevant. However, though, I think part of the problem, which we then tend to tag along as the inability or the lack of disposable income, comes down to choices. And herein I would say, for example, he spoke about healthy and nutritious food. The issue about that with lifestyle diseases is absolutely true. But it is a matter of choice, I believe, more than ability to purchase. Because what do we need as nutritious? I mean, our farmers cry out from time to time about lack of sales and that they need bigger market. And if we do a survey, we will recognize that as a people, and I'm talking general, meaning both youth and adult, we tend to have a preference for what is foreign than what is local. I've been looking at it for more than a year now, and I've been speaking to some of my colleagues, and I'm saying, look, I think we have moved away, quite a while now, but more intensely in the last 2 or 3 years, from proper home cooking to fast food. I mean, every one of the fast food places, they are filled on a daily basis. Almost everyone who works in the city, you look around at lunchtime, you see them with a little paper bag, a little brown bag or white bag, styrofoam boxes, because they buy food out. The issue of being a good homemaker for a young lady is really not something of great interest anymore.
But let me ask you, though, Mr. Bhola, and while I agree with those points you've made, but is it that people are opting to eat out, opting for fast food, because they find themselves in a bind when it comes to having to do double, triple jobs? Or is it becoming almost cheaper to buy a burger on the side of the street than to go to the supermarket, because one, of the high cost of living, the cost of items at the supermarket, and two, their salaries?
But Joseph, what makes the burger? Most of it comes from the supermarket.
Yeah, but if you want to go to talk about it,
there has been a change in the lifestyle of people.
So why do you think, though, that young people find it easier to do that? As a father yourself, why is it you think that young people find it easier to negotiate their way through a fast food joint?
There are a lot of issues that we have to bring into play here. And I'm not debating the fact about increased wages and so forth. But all of that comes with planning, all of that comes with preparation, because you don't just get up tomorrow morning and say, look, wages are too low, so let's increase it by 30% or let's increase it by 20%, whatever it may be. There is a need. I mean, more money doesn't necessarily mean better standard of living. I mean, you look at the United States, you look at Canada and some of those places, they suffer with some of the same issues that we suffer here within Grenada, despite the fact that the wages are better. It is about how people...
What are some of those issues you make a specific reference to?
Just say that again, please. I didn't hear you.
You said in the U.S. they suffer with some of the same issues that we suffer here with. What are some of those issues?
And I'm talking about the question that you asked in terms of young people and, the issue of as Joel was saying, healthcare and so, maybe a little easier to access in the United States and Canada because there's health insurance and so forth in place. You asked specifically, why do I think that there's this problem with people wanting to eat outside more than eating in? It's just been a complete change from what we knew before. I mean, times are changing and we have to accept that. Things have become much more modernized. People have greater access to information. We see more of what the first world countries do. And we are sort of copycat as a people. We try to adapt the same style and living standards that they do. And while I do agree, and I was about to make the point that more disposable income will put you financially in a better place. But let's also look at some of the choices. Some of the very people that we complain about and the young people, and I am not in any way trying to bash young people. I want to make that absolutely clear, because sometimes when you raise certain issues, people see you as a basher and that you don't care about young people. And that is not the point I'm making here. I'm just saying that some of our young people are a little bit misguided. And I'll give you an example. I have a son, a young son, and he damaged his phone. And I'm getting very personal now. And then he said to me that he needs to get a phone. I said, okay, I can assist you to get one. And he wanted a phone that cost $1,200. So I asked the question, a phone at $1,200 and a phone at $700, is the quality of speaking or the voice you're hearing on the other side, would it be different? And he said no. And I said, a 700 and a 1200, are the features so different that what you can do with the 1200 you won't be able to do with the 700? And his answer was, well, you know, the other one has more cameras and the $700 one and what have you.
Right.
It was
and I agree with those, and I do understand the challenge of young people not often making the right choices in terms of prioritizing. But you get the sense, though, Mr. Bhola, that many of us are forced to make some hard choices in terms of what we wear or cannot wear, what we eat or cannot eat. Some people say to you, I want to eat healthy. But when I look at my salary and I look at when I go to the supermarket, that I have to pay $4 for 2 grains for two grains of banana. I $150 for a grain of plantain. I may probably just decide, you know what, let me just pick up a big sun saltfish in the morning instead of having to go pay $12 for a pound of saltfish in the supermarket. Don't you think those are some of the harsh realities that's forcing people to go in those directions?
They may well be, Mr. Cadore. They may well be. So that's why I'm not disbanding everything that was said. But I'm saying, and you made the point, sacrifices. I mean, those who did it before, they made tremendous sacrifices. Long gone the days when almost every household had a little backyard garden, 6 bean stool, 6 lettuce in a little smokering box. Long gone the days when at the back of the house you would run out when you're cooking and just one hand a banana or blubber. I mean, one little yam bed. People just don't participate in those things anymore. So the issue of sacrifice is important. The issue of choices is important. While I accept that something has to be done about wage increase, but we have seen in other society, increase in wage does not necessarily bring a change about in people's ability to do what is best for them in terms of eating healthier. As a matter of fact, there are cases where when people start having more disposable income, their lifestyle become worse than when they were having less disposable income.
Well, those things are relative.
Everybody,
those
not
things
for
are relative.
everybody.
But you would agree, though. But greater disposable income puts you in a position, Joel, where I can now choose objectively as to where I can go, what I can do. There's so many reports, and I'm following one here from Oxfam, from this economic review, indicators of one's standard of living. Savings, my ability to save, my ability to choose where to go, what to eat, when to travel. those are qualities more and more that seems to be diminishing from our way of life here at home. What say you?
And I agree.
Joel?
And you see, what we need to look at it from the standpoint is that the greater disposable income and the greater people ability to lift them, improve their standard of living and their quality of life, is shift the responsibility away from government, right? No government can know, instead of having to put millions of dollars towards safety net programs for people who basically cannot sustain themselves or meet their basic commitments, if people are now able to earn more money and they're able to have greater level of disposable income, they will be able to afford health insurance, they will be able to plan their own retirement, so they can take out their own retirement plan, own contributory retirement plan, and they will be in a better position to build intergenerational wealth, right? So we have to look at it from that standpoint that we need to find a way whereas we can actually reduce the cost of living. That's one of the things we can focus on doing, or try to find a way to increase the minimum wage and to increase the income level in the country.
Mr. Bhola, an economist once said that one of the, he says one of government's job, one of the pillars, they said the best way to improve a country's GDP is to get its people to work. Plain and simple. Idle hands, get them working. Do you agree with that? And if you do agree with it, how juxtaposition that to where in our Greenidge context, do we have enough people at work? And if so, if not, why not? And how do we get that to happen?
Well, there's a lot that needs to happen. I do agree with you. The more people at work, the more circulation, the more money you would have in circulation, the better it will be. But this is not purely the job of government. Government needs to set the enabling environment. So Joel spoke earlier on about the access to loans and to study business. That has been maybe not at the level it should be, but I believe it has improved significantly because the government has this program at the GDB, the Small Business Loan. I know within the Ministry of Youth, there is a program where loans can be accessed by young people called Youth Bees. I know that through the GIDC, there are programs where grants can be given for startup capital and so for various business. But we probably need to see more of it. So the more people at work, the more disposable income there will be, the more spending ability people will have, and the more buoyant the economy will become. But I believe by our standards in Grenada, sometimes we believe that it is the government's role only. And governments do have their part to play. As I said, set the enabling environment, but really the private sector is who drives growth. They are the engine of growth. And I think sometimes too many of us are a little bit timid to take the step into the business world, yes? We are not a business-oriented people. We are not business-minded, if I can say that. Some of us, because there are a lot of local people, if you look at the track record and you look back at them, had started small and has done well and is still doing well in terms of business. Intergeneration wealth, as Joel said, they have been able to hand down from one generation to the next. While there are some of us that continue to inherit generational poverty because our parents lived a certain way, and so the children just follow suit. Nobody decided to make a change. Nobody decided and set and has the mindset that they can get out of poverty. And but within every challenge, there will be opportunities. Some people have a better eye to see the opportunities. Some people have better hands to grab the opportunities, while some of us are prepared to wait to see what would happen.
Okay.
And I would agree that maybe in trying to set the conducive environment, government needs to do more in terms of preparation, in terms of planning, in terms of education and knowledge sharing, you know.
But when you say do more, because do more can always seem like a blanket statement. Are you satisfied? You made mention of GDP, the small, there's this GDP and so on. But are you satisfied that government, Joel, I'm going to come back to you, Mr. Bhola, but are you satisfied as a young person that our government has done enough in the past, is doing satisfactory, doing enough now to provide that enabling environment that says to a young person, you know what? There are challenges externally, there are risks, but there are opportunities that I can literally close my eyes and I know beyond any shadow of doubt that I'm going to get support.
I don't agree that the government is doing enough in terms of really giving young people the hope that you could stay right here in Grenada and you could become, do, and achieve everything you want. I mean, we have seen cases where young people who have engaged could not afford to purchase land here. I know one, for example, a nurse, and she left Grenada and went up the island, the BVI, and within 2 years, she was able to come back and build a home. This is the reality. So it's not that our young people here are not talented. It's not that our young people are not innovative. It's not that our young people do not have that ideal for success and prosperity. The fact is, there's lack of opportunities, and we have to face it for what it is. In terms of GDP, for example, while government may provide financial resources at GDP, if you do a survey and you look at where those resources go, it don't go to young people. And also the conditions to qualify for those loans is very stringent. In some cases, they're asking for collateral. A young person coming from a very humble beginning in poverty, family may be squatting in some way, and they don't have the access to collateral. They may have great ideas. They might have be properly educated in the field for which they want to start their business. But the fact is, the condition, even in some cases, they are required to have life insurance as collateral. See, they don't have the money to even afford life insurance. But they may have good ideas, and what they need is support. What they need is access to finance with less stringent conditions. So the finance is there, and the government will say, well, the young people are not accessing it. It's sitting there. The question you need to ask, why are they not accessing it? Therefore, you need to review the requirements or the conditions to qualify for those loans. So that is where the major challenge is. Because I have known many young persons with brilliant ideas, including one gentleman who studied an innovative way of feeding poultry, the chickens and stuff. Mm-hmm. And he went there to get a loan. Matter of fact, he would have pursued a course, took his money, sacrificed, pursued a course to learn an innovative way of feeding the chickens, and he actually went to GDP to access the fund to start that poultry. But he got to run around.
And it's interesting that seems to be an everyday conversation. And I know the argument will always be that it is unique. We have to take a quick break, but when we come back, though, I want us to take a look at healthcare. Mr. Bhola made a very excellent point that more and more young people, our culture, seem to be shifting towards fast foods. But I'm wondering whether or not government, in noticing that, are taking the proactive steps to ensure understanding the challenge with lifestyle diseases. What is government in its entirety doing? And whether or not our education system is in a place to draw out the entrepreneurial spirit within us. Is it that's the case, or young people have to figure it out on their own? We take a quick commercial break. It's Election Watch, where we dissect the issues as they affect you. We'll be right back.
Pharmacare, the pharmacy that cares. Halifax Street, St. George's. Affordable access to care, a wide range of prescription drugs, medical supplies, health and beauty items, diabetic testing supplies, immune system support products, vitamins, supplements, and lots more. Visit us today or call 440-2165. Ask about or call in prescriptions, discounted items, and special delivery requests. Gittins Pharmacare. Care, convenience, expertise. We've got it all.
So you've got the new ACB Smart Card. Around the corner or around the world, you can withdraw cash from any ATM displaying a Visa logo. You can also use it to shop online securely or pay the cashier at any vendor's point of sale machine. Safer than cash. Just tap and go for quick payment. Plus, get transaction alerts to monitor your smart card activity. Bank smarter with the ACB Smart Card.
When you need your prescription filled or you require non-prescribed medication, supplements, or all your personal needs, visit Gittins Healthcare at locations on Wall Street, Grand Anse, Victoria Street, Glendale, and Central Deputy Street, Wharf. Gittins Healthcare aims to provide an exceptional personalized pharmacy experience. Additionally, children under 5 and adults 55 years and over will enjoy 10% discount on purchases of $20 and over on prescription medication. Stop settling for less. Visit Gittins Healthcare, where your health is our priority.
Level of convenience and comfort awaits you when you shop at Rise and Shine Supermarket and Hardware Supplies, Griffin Lane, Grenville. Convenient, because we are open Sunday to Sunday. We're even at your service on public holidays. Comfort, because we are easily accessible to the physically challenged. Free Wi-Fi is available while you shop, and bags come at no charge. Everyday low prices and excellent customer care. Adequate parking available. We supply everything you can possibly think of. Family and home supplies, fresh meat, vegetables, and personal care products. All brands of cooking gas at affordable prices. You can send in your order, have it pulled, or pick up express.
Thank you. Welcome back to the program Election Watch. I'm Joseph Cadore, and thanks to my guests this evening joining me live in studio, Joel Greenidge, Youth Ambassador, and the General Secretary of the New National Party, Mr. Roland Bhola. Mr. Bhola, I'm going to take the conversation right to you. You hinted to it that education is one of the pillars that definitely can take us out of poverty, and we talk about our education system not being geared towards opening up that entrepreneurial spirit within us. That's a failure of whom? Who should take responsibility for that, if that isn't a fact, a fair assessment?
Definitely government, Mr. Carter. Definitely government. But before I continue on that, I just want to bring one slight correction to a statement that you made just before we went to the break. I said young people have a moving more to fast food. I said people in general, not just young. I did not specify the young people. They are included, but generally people.
Fair enough. Okay.
To clarify that, it is people.
That's fine.
Altogether. Yeah, but in terms of guiding our education system and bringing out the entrepreneurial spirit in our people and getting our people to become more aware of opportunities that they can harness, even in tough times, I think government definitely has to take that blame. I think our educators need to become a bit more sensitive to what is happening around us. I think the planners of our curriculums and the people who decide the subject areas that must be taught, and so they have to become a lot more sensitive to the environment within which they live, and make the shift, make that quantum leap from what was to what is needed now. So there's no bones about it. Some attempts have been made, but not sufficient. And I did say earlier on that despite the funds that have been made available, I believe that we need to do more. There need to be some more hand-holding sessions where even though you have the seed money, you have the startup capital and funds, we need to have the people who have had successes before, the people who have started with almost nothing and now has achieved and has become stars, find a way to incorporate them in the projects that government are doing, and be able to help those that are coming up to guide them because just the funding alone is not enough. And that is, I think, one of the reasons why through the Youth Bees program, before you can access the funding, you need to complete a course or two in business management and several other things that they make you do and be certified. And then you are qualified for the grant and the loans that are available.
Joel, healthcare. The health of a nation is a wealth of the nation. And I think we look at the impact that COVID has had, and COVID has almost been beaten senselessly for almost everything that seems to go wrong. Where in fact, I'm of the opinion that COVID exposed a lot of the kinks within our system. Our healthcare system. Are we really ready to take our people, our young people, the next generation, into the 21st century and be able to say, you know what, we are ready to have a strong, working, productive sector that's willing to go out and produce?
You know, it's quite important that you made that point, because, I mean, if you look at our working population and you look at the level of sick leaves that we have per year and the level of productivity that is lost every year in terms of, you know, person taking sick leaves, it leads you to question how serious as a country, as a nation, we are about healthcare. Because we cannot talk about prosperity, we cannot talk about economic development if we are not talking about the health of our nation. And when I listen to the level of obesity that exists in our schools among our young boys and girls, the future of our country, it is frightening, it is alarming. And it basically says that in the near future, the cost, in most cases that sometimes fall on the shoulders of government to subsidize the healthcare costs, would have a greater impact on a society. It would have an impact on government having access to resources to build our infrastructure, to expand in renewable energy, to educate our young people, and to provide the necessary skills that they will need to be competitive and be able to have access to the jobs of the future. So we need to really revisit how we socialize or how we culture our young people in terms of what is healthy. And a lot of parents sometimes, they have to take the blame. You know, because a lot of young, I realize that how you train a child to eat from very young is how they actually going to grow to eat. And when you look at most parents today, they themselves are eating a lot of fast foods. They're the ones who bring it home in the early stage of those children and expose them to it. So we have to go back as a society and look at it. What sort of society do we want as it relates to health? What sort of healthy population do we want? And how can we really achieve that together as a people? Because at the end of the day, we all would be impacted. Because when one family member or one family has a health issue, you saw the whole community has to come together, the whole country has to come together and help through motorcades and all of those things.
Mr. Bhola, and I want to ask you both of this simultaneously, because you hinted to it, and I agree that the conversation of nation development does not lay separately at the feet of government. You hinted to the fact that the private sector must. Are you satisfied, though, that, you know, very often you get the sense that private entities, they come on board and they're given almost like a rites of passage to rape the land, enjoy the luxuries of it. And I, for one, often think that more needs to be done, where we say to certain companies, you know what, if you're making millions in that area, then you're supposed to be taxed, especially when it comes to healthcare issues. You're seeing all of these increasing fast food joints that are popping up all over the place. The question is, if you want to go that route, do you think government needs to be more stringent as to what they decide and make policies that, for instance, that would say, listen, we have an obesity problem, maybe we need to decide X, Y, and Z cannot be served at certain places, or these private sector entities are allowed to contribute into a special fund that goes into rainy days for healthcare as part of the conversation of getting certain concessions? What say you?
How you do it is a matter to be determined, but I believe that there must be a national conversation. I think, as you correctly said, government must take the lead. We need to highlight what those issues are. And there you had it, you're coming around and talking about how we culture ourselves, how we culture our children. I have seen parents that have babies and are giving them carbonated drinks to drink instead of giving them nutritious stuff. Is it just a case of affordability, or is it a case of what is cheaper, what is easier, what is quicker for them to do? So we have to dissect all of those things. I think there need to be a national conversation on some of the issues. Healthcare is really a very important area, and an area that deserves to have a lot more hands and a lot more eyes and a lot more people involved. And when I say that, I don't necessarily speak about medical faculty, people as nurses and doctors and orderlies and so. Yes, you need to have your medical centers and hospitals properly staffed. That's a given. But I think more of our people need to get involved in the conversation. And we need to start retraining and reteaching people from schools, from at home. We need to have some of the social workers being trained not only to go and speak about the ills of how you discipline children and so, but to talk about meals. We have a Food and Nutrition Council who I believe they are trying. I sometimes hear them on different programs. They talk about different recipes and how we can use local and more local stuff and to serve them in different ways. But how many of us are paying full attention? How many of us give our time to listen and then to practice? So I think they need to be given more prominence. They probably need to visit schools. They probably need to visit communities. They probably need to be this evening sessions where young people can go in and people from the Food and Nutrition Council can teach them and show them how to utilize a lot of the local stuff that we have to make different dishes that can be tasty and that can encourage people once again to get back to healthy eating. So, I mean, I don't think there is any one straight way of doing it. There can be diverse ways, but we need to have the national conversation on it and get more people on board.
And indeed, I agree. There must be a national conversation. Just 2-3 weeks ago, GBN said the GBN had a 2 weeks health forum, and I think. Do you get the sense, Joel, that very often these conversations we speak of certain issues, but not holistically and collectively? So we talk healthcare, but not making the connection between healthcare, being healthy, and the question of productivity and preventative care. Do you think we very often we make that linkage while we talk about it openly?
And that's a valid point. I mean, health and well-being is such a broad thing, even from exercising, physical exercising, even from just sporting events at schools and all of those stuff from a very young age. Even we create a culture of people cycling. I've seen some countries like Japan how people will walk. I mean, in Grenada, if someone have to go just down the road there, they will take a bus or they will drive their private vehicle. So we need to also encourage that aspect of it, physical activities, physical exercise, sporting activities. We need to also make sure that in order for us to do that, we have to make sure that we have the facilities in place so that that safe environment where our people can actually exercise. Also, we need to really focus on preventative care. I think that is something we tend to be reactive in our society. And I think healthcare needs to get to a place in the community level. We must begin, as you said, before it actually become a bigger problem, we must first be able to get down into the communities, educate the people on diabetes, educate the people on hypertension, because there are a lot of miscommunication when how people interpret those things. So if people have access to information and they understand that in the long run, the impact it will have on their family economically and otherwise, and how it will affect their ability to work and to produce for their families. People would make better decisions, upstream. So I think we really need to have a holistic approach to healthcare, but also health and well-being of our population.
Mental health, Joel, and it's one of the areas that's been brought into focus, and even more so during COVID. Our ability to cope. And when we say mental health, there's always a taboo. We're not talking about people that go in local.
Yeah,
we're not talking about that. People's ability to cope with the basic demands of life. Paying my bills, sending my children to school. How much money do I have in my savings account? Do I have a rainy day fund? And most people are bogged down by the reality that they don't have any savings.
Yeah.
Whether or not it's a direct result of some of the financial mishaps we've had, or there's no denying that, or basically by the very fact that cost of living is high and they live from one paycheck to the next. Mentally, they're not able to cope. Even that too becomes a burden on our healthcare system.
Yeah, and it's true, and I mean, depression and stuff can trigger off a lot of other health issues, yeah. But I mean, for example, during the COVID situations, I know of a few persons who literally was considered attempting suicide. Some of them would have slit their wrists because they really couldn't find it to cope. And the pressure, being a young person, most importantly in this country, is pretty difficult. The pressure of even the single mothers in the country, having to be in a situation where you're looking at your kids and you literally cannot afford to feed them. I got those messages. You cannot afford to feed them. You have no food. And those situations and that constant financial pressure that some people had to endure for quite a long time, with no evidence of anything, any possibility, any easement of that financial burden on them. I mean, even people who were able to comfortably meet their bills before have been set back 5 years. A lot of these persons would have took the moratorium. Now they're faced with higher debt on their shoulders, and in their mind is like they don't know when they would ever get an ease up. So that a lot of people are finding it really, really difficult to cope. And we may walk the street every single day, and we see people are smiling, but beyond those smiles,
nothing to smile about.
We don't understand and the pain, and because of our society, the stigma that is associated with getting counseling. Going to a counselor. The stigma, if someone know you go to a counselor, they think you're automatically crazy. So you find a lot of people are suffering in silence, right. And those things are sort of creating a bigger problem for them in terms of its impact on their health.
Mr. Bhola, your thoughts, mental health, do you get a sense that people are finding it much more challenging in this current economic space to deal with the issues as they are, the day-to-day issues?
Sure, Mr. Cadore. It has not been an easy, probably the last 5 or 6 years. I mean, coming out of an economic meltdown, we understood, that there was a sort of recession. We went into COVID sometime after. And just when we are tipping out of, we are not out of it yet, we were just tipping out of COVID. There's this war in Europe, in Russia, in Ukraine, and that is in itself going to have serious economic impact for us, even though we are millions of miles away from where the activity is happening. So it makes it more and more difficult. Because as mentioned by Joel, there were some people that was living a relatively comfortable life. They were able to meet their demands on a monthly basis, pay their mortgages, send their children to school. And as a result of the economic pressures, as a result of COVID and other things, maybe one member of the family had to be displaced, has lost their job, has now become unemployed. Sometimes both members of the family, mother and father. And so you are now in a different place. And even if you had relatively reasonable savings or what for hard times, I don't know how many of us in the present situation and for the salaries that we work for, that can put a savings in place that can last 10, 12, or 15 years, or probably even 5 years. We may be able to get by in a couple of months, and if nothing happens after that, it's a steep and slippery slope that takes us downhill. And that, in and of itself, plus a number of other issues, will create serious mental pressure for these people. And, so I don't think we are displacing discussing the issue of mental health and psychological impact that the economic recession is having on the lives of people. Even young people, children, the students, people at school. And from what they feel and the way they react, it can impact the parents. So, it's really a big issue that more attention needs to be paid to. And for those of us who take it for granted that we can laugh at or make jokes of people whom we knew have been sane and have been living a relatively respectable life, and now we see them being under some pressure, and we think we can point fingers and laugh at them. We just do not understand the kind of pressures that people are going through at this time.
Some have argued, Mr. Bhola, that and Joel, and I take your comments first, Mr. Bhola, that there's been an erosion of the so-called middle class. There is traditionally used to be poor, upper class, middle class, and traditionally you went to school, you got a good education, you got a job, you were supposed to be part of that reasonably enough middle class. Arguments is that has long been eroded, Mr. Bhola. What you have now is the rich, they have, and everybody else has been relegated to catching and living one day at a time, hoping that something happens. Is that a thought you share? And if not, is that a concern to you? As a former parliamentarian, a man within the political realms?
Well, I'm not only within the political realms. I'm still very much in my village. I'm still very much in the grassroots. I still live among the people who I've always known all my life. And I have a very unique understanding of what is happening. While I don't totally agree that the middle class has been, or I don't agree that the middle class has been eroded totally, I believe there are some people who have relegated from middle class to a lower class now in society. And that has happened for a number of different reasons, yes? While the issues of COVID and what have you can take some blame and take some licks, there are also some among us who have not had a good enough balance between what we are able to do financially and what we were attempting to do financially. I hope I can make the distinction in that there were some among us who have gotten to a certain level, and nothing is wrong with having ambition, and nothing is wrong about you trying to get to another strata, another level on the ladder or on that upward climb. You're looking for upward mobility. Absolutely nothing is wrong with that. People having their dreams, people having their goals, and people having aspirations to live a better life. That is fine, and that should be encouraged. However, we have to do whatever we're doing within the realms of reality. And I believe in some instances, there may have been people who try to skip a treader or two, to jump that or to climb that ladder a little faster than they should.
Okay.
And have insufficient support. So I don't want to say it's only because of the problems of COVID and other economic issues that some people have been relegated.
But you do agree that there's been a serious incursion on the middle class in Grenada?
Yes, some people have been getting some body blows, and it has caused them to really get to a lower level now.
Okay. Time is of issue, but there's another issue. One is, and Mr. Bhola, I'm going to start with you because you hinted to it. Government support program, the SEED program, and certainly government has a responsibility ultimately, and sometimes we know it takes a lot on the country's coffers, Joel. When we have this erosion on the middle class, you see more and more people find themselves on the breadline, poverty, the cost of living, and very, very often, in all honesty, there are external factors that can contribute towards it. But there's always a question being asked, though, and very often government boasts of increases in the SEED program. And I'd also want to ask, what does government spending more in a SEED program, what is it really telling us? Is it that government is just giving it more to the people? Or is it that the harsh reality is more and more people are being forced because of that incursion on the inability to meet the daily demands? They're now forced to go to government and say, listen, this is my position. But very often it comes across as though it's all happy-go-lucky, and it is a good sign that more people are on the SEED program, when that, in my estimation, should not be. What say you, Mr. Bhola?
Well, for those who are misguided, Mr. Cadore, and I think you have it absolutely correct. When you have to, as a government or any country, expand your social programs, when you have to take in more people on the social programs because they are now on the breadline, it is never a good sign. But it is something that becomes necessary, and these social programs are meant to be a sort of stopgap measure. As a matter of fact, as a result of COVID and a lot of people falling out of wealth and losing their jobs and so, there have been addition to the program, but if you remember quite well, some of these people are there for a 12-month period. And the hope and the attempt is that within a 12-month period, and probably in some instances less than that, you would have some of these people graduating out of that program. So if there are those who are glorifying that and think that it's a good thing, then they are misguided in the way of thinking. But government has an obligation, as you correctly said, to help people when they are on their knees. And there was an era in our lifetime when we talk about giving people handout. And I know that has sort of changed, and we say you want to give people a hand up as opposed to a handout, because you want to take them from where they are to a better place and eventually graduate out of it. And as a matter of fact, if one does a study of the intent of the SEED program, it is meant to help people at a time when they are lowest and to get them out of that position. So SEED is not meant to be, or being on that program is not meant to be permanent by any means. It is meant to help you over a period of time.
But is that an appreciation, Mr. Bhola? And then I'll get Joel to comment. Is that an appreciation that is clearly understood by the participants? Because very often it comes across, and in day-to-day conversation, that the SEED program, basically people see it as a way of government. People see, listen, let me just live off the government. Government is providing, and they go through this revolving door. Once they satisfy it, that listen, more money is going to be spent on these SEED programs.
Well, people have to understand, for those who pretend they don't, one indicator is that annually people are being reassessed. So for those who are on the SEED program, every year they are being reassessed. And I have known cases, and a number of cases, where people come and complain and say, well, I was on the program, but I was removed. And then you say, well, why don't you go to those in authority, those who work with the program, those who administer the program, and they will tell them clearly, look, we have seen your improvement from when you were first brought into the program a year ago, or 2 years ago, or 3 years ago, as the case may be, to now. And so we have graduated you out of the program because from our assessment year after year, we recognize that there have been improvements in your economic standing.
Okay.
So people know, and they should understand. Conveniently, some of us forget.
that is so true. Joel, you get a sense that very often government seems to glorify these programs as the trump card of saying, I can help the poor, when in fact it is saying to us something much, much deeper?
I think government needs to take the blame for creating a dependent culture. And that is the reality about it. And to hit the point earlier when you spoke about the middle class is eroding, that is true. The reason being is that when government have all these social safety net programs, it's the middle class who are subsidizing those programs by increasing taxes and fees and levies, and is eliminating the disposable income of the middle class. So when a man used to have $500 or $1,000 disposable income, but then the cost is income tax increase, or fees, levies, his house insurance increase, all these different things, all these things increase. What happened? That $1,000 become eroded, and therefore his ability to afford and to sustain himself, and even access a loan, maybe to invest in a business or something, that $1,000 could have paid that loan for him to have access to that business, to access the loan to build that business. So the dependent culture government has created, people are now not even motivated or inspired to want to build themselves because they know whether they work or not. They have a check, even through the money program. You know much person used to just sit on home and receive a check in their account. When they say, Joel, I get my check every month. So they're not even showing up to benefit from the apprenticeship program because they're getting a check. And that kind of culture now, as they grow older, what happens? They continue to depend on government. And government will handle this, handle that, handle this, and where are the money coming from? It's coming from government coffers. Monies that could have gone towards developing the productive sectors of our country, create sustainable jobs so that these people would not have to be dependent on those programs. These people can find jobs in the productive sector. Those young people will not have to depend on apprenticeship programs for $700 or $800 or $1,000. They will now have access to sustainable job in the productive sector, and they will be productive, and our economy will develop, and we will see the necessary growth. So we have to create a culture where people understand the value of hard work, understand the value of not depending on government. So government has to take that responsibility, and they need to change the culture by reducing on some of those safety net programs and really create sustainable jobs for the people. I believe, in my opinion, those safety net programs is totally politically motivated. That's my position, and it's to the detriment of the development of our economy. Our economy is on the verge of imminent collapse, but every single year, every single budget cycle, safety net programs continue to increase. And that's a sad situation.
Conversation as we heard from two different perspectives. Let me give you a chance to share before we wrap. Mr. Bhola, yes?
For 30 seconds, I just want to challenge Mr. Greenidge, and I don't mean to be argumentative here.
No,
but you mentioned about
feel free.
taxes. When was the last time we saw increase in any tax regime in Greenidge? If you can say that to us. And we spoke earlier on about the need for government to do more in terms of encouraging and teaching and getting people to become productive. So if you get rid of the apprenticeship program, how would we teach and get young people involved in eventually going on their own and doing their own business?
It's a conversation that is going to continue. And the question is, where do we go from here? And many would ask, what is government's role? What is our role? What is the private sector's role? There's one thing that is quite constant, that change must come. How it comes, it's a different conversation. Whether or not you see is a change in attitude, as Mr. Bhola determined, a change of policies, I'm not sure. But it's a conversation that we'll continue to have as we continue our election watch. The issues are out there. I need you to start thinking about it, how it affects you. Reminding you as we get ready to go to the polls, whenever that is. Don't just think party. Don't just think about a friend. Think about the future, your child, your children, and the Grenada, and the legacy that we all want for this little piece of rock that is called home. I'm Joseph Cadore. I'll be back with you next week when we put another set of issues under the microscope on Election Watch. Good night. God bless.
During these times, we are facing the same